Choice FM is live at 5.
But it's like this, the South got something to say. That's all I got to say.
Reuben Blackwell and Express Yourself on Choice FM.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Express Yourself with Reuben Blackwell. I'm so glad that you're spending Wednesday afternoon chatting and listening with me. I hope you're safe on your way home from work or on your way to work or maybe just taking a break. Well, I tell you what, I have some good talk for you today and an exceptional guest who is an outstanding young professional making headway in many spaces and places, not just in North Carolina, but around the country too. I'd like you to welcome with me our special guest for this evening, Ms. Yolanda Taylor, Esquire. Yolanda is the principal of Yolanda Taylor. Is that correct? Yolanda Taylor, LLC, law firm, as well as a professor of law at Wake Forest University. And she wears a number of hats in her many roles in advising and working with communities. So we're going to talk a little today about Yolanda, the trajectory that's brought her to this space and this place. And then we're going to talk about some community development issues, concerns, themes, trends, cautions, anything that our good discussion leads us to. So Yolanda, welcome to Express Yourself. So happy to see you and so happy to be with you.
Thank you so much, Reuben. It's my pleasure to be here as well on this platform to discuss with someone like you who I too deeply admire. So I'm glad to be here.
Well, thank you. I didn't know your threshold was so low for admiration. Okay, we're happy to have you. Why don't you, first of all, before we jump into the good stuff about what you're doing and how you're impacting communities, let's just talk about your trajectory to becoming an attorney. And just give me 2 minutes about who is Yolanda and how did I get to where I am.
Okay, well, Yolanda is cornfields, cotton fields, rural South Carolina is where I grew up as a child. My dad was looking for work after his job shipped to, I think it was a place like Chicago in the early 80s. So then he moved a little up north to North Carolina, Wilson, North Carolina, again, a rural area, but not as rural as South Carolina where I grew up at. And he moved into an area that was racially segregated. In fact, to this day, I believe he was steered there. It did provide, I will say, better opportunities as far as schools, if you can believe that, compared to where I was in rural South Carolina. So in school, I was part of Upward Bound. I remember doing programs at Duke University. I'm getting old, so I don't know the specifics, but I do remember being involved in programs that were around politics. And by the time I was 18, I knew I wanted to go to NC State and major in political science because I just felt like, the world revolves around laws and politics. And I just felt like equipping myself with the law will also help me to empower others. So, I knew going in, I wanted to be a lawyer. So majored in political science, minored in African American studies, graduated in 1995 from NC State, and then went on to law school in Michigan. Thomas M. Cooley Law School is now part of Western Michigan University. So I think my essay that I submitted to law school was that I wanted to do the work that Martin Luther King, Thurgood Marshall did, not knowing that I would be doing the work.
Yes,
in the 90s, I'm thinking, everything's fine. America thought it had elected its first Black president and Bill Clinton. People thought that things were, okay, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe we, became acclimated a little bit. But that was it. I always wanted to empower communities. And I just knew that unlocking this reign of the law was the key to that.
Well, I tell you, you're doing a great job, Yolanda. And did you tell us how, when you graduated from law school, I don't know how soon after you graduated when I met you, but all I know is that I met you in your role when you were the managing attorney for Eastern Carolina Legal Services. and I saw a young lady in front of me who was dynamic, brilliant in her strategy development, and open-minded about the places and the spaces that the law should be able to take you. Tell us a little about your shift in your move to desiring to serve poor people. Because when you're working with legal services, you're working with people who are not able to write big checks to private attorney firms. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Legal Aid of North Carolina wasn't my first firm. You met me probably, I think I was going on like 13 years in my legal career when you met
Come
me.
on, yeah, you were seasoned, weren't you?
Yeah, I consider it in the 8 years. I certainly had experienced various aspects of law. Did some product liability work for a big law firm, then went to a smaller law firm doing workers' comp and personal injury law, which I definitely love because, again, I felt like I was helping someone that was maybe at a disadvantage when it came to the law, someone that had been harmed, somebody that was hurt. So definitely loved workers' comp, more so than I did personal injury.
Mhm.
And so I don't know. I mean, you're a spiritual person, you're a man of God, I'm a woman of God, woman of faith. I was just reading my Bible, and this is exactly how it happened, Ruben. I was reading my Bible, and it was just like, help the widow, help the oppressed, help the fatherless. So I'm like, I don't know what you mean by that, God.
Close it up. That's enough. I
Like,
mean,
how is
la,
that
la,
going to
la,
happen?
la,
I
la.
didn't really know that much about legal aid of North Carolina, but I just felt like, maybe God would set me up for this next season of my life because, it was like one of those times, you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and God wants to talk to you, right? So it
Yeah.
was like those scriptures that I would get and fast forward. A colleague of mine who was in private practice with me at the time, because I had started my own practice then, this is my second rodeo. She had gone on to legal aid, and then she hired me to do some contract work for legal aid. And it was helping, survivors of domestic violence and doing some
Mm,
research around foreclosures. Around that time, the housing market had took a dip,
mm.
and we were facing a foreclosure crisis.
And that was 2008. Is that when that was? Or
Yeah, that was like around 2007 when she
Mhm,
wanted me to do the research, right?
mhm,
Which was to help her with some foreclosure cases that she was working on. But
mhm,
then after, being a contract attorney for about a year or so, the market was scary. I was doing real estate closings as well. So I said, you know what? I kind of like this environment at Legal Aid. It's collegiate. I was still fairly a young attorney, even though I had some experience. So I decided
mhm.
to, jump ship from private practice, and I started Legal Aid in 2007, and I
And
worked there for a little over 10 years.
so for the 10 years that you were leading legal aid, we met because there was the beginning of an intersection between the law and healthcare. And there was much ado in our state related to healthcare coverage of poor people.
Yes.
And there was, we had a president who was emphasizing inclusion and emphasizing the fact that healthcare system should strive to do all it can to cover everyone that it can cover.
Mhm.
And that's when we were able to experience as a nation really Medicaid expansion and the Affordable Care Act.
Mhm.
Um, why don't you talk a little about the intersection place between health and between the law and between what community development means?
Yeah, definitely. And it was at Legal Aid where I developed my lens for, helping those who were experiencing poverty. In 2007, when I started Legal Aid, I actually started in the Wilson office, worked there for 3 years, went to Raleigh for 4 to deal with the foreclosure crisis, then came back in 2013 to lead the program in Wilson or Eastern North Carolina, parts of it. What I saw was that, of course, the majority of the people that were experiencing poverty, I began to see the reasons for poverty. And one reason for poverty is health, right? Some
Mm,
people were disabled and could not work. So, we did, disability cases or government benefit cases where we were actually helping folks, attempt to get like Medicaid, that it was essential. So I saw where health, was a contributing factor to why someone was experiencing poverty. But I also saw that when the Affordable Care Act, like you stated, became law, or that it became this big thing that some people didn't like, they felt it was a mandate. I saw that even the poorest people, could not still access it because there was that gap. Remember that gap in being able to actually get the Affordable Care Act, So, but it still was a game changer, right? And that was just because North Carolina didn't do what some other states did as it related to,
Correct.
closing that gap. So, but other states, people were able to take advantage of it, but there were people that had like zero income who were not included. And a lot of the clients at Legal Aid, some were like not working at all or on very fixed income, like Social Security, disability, or they were just low wage workers. I mean, there were clients that had 2 or 3 jobs. So when you think about, who's responsible in this society, why not a woman, usually a Black woman with kids working 3 jobs? How dare you say she's not, responsible? It's just that jobs are like low wage jobs, and
And daycare is expensive.
yes, and
I
child
mean, tremendously expensive, tremendously expensive.
I
And
said myself while working at Legal Aid, how expensive it was.
and I forgot to say that Yolanda is a beautiful wife and a phenomenal mom of 2 brilliant, creative, young, dynamic people who are going to change the whole earth. I'm just saying they're 2 of the most vivacious young ladies I've ever met.
Thank you,
So,
Reuben.
so good job. Good job, Mom. Good job.
Thank you. So, and that's a balance between like being a
Yeah.
career mom, walking in purpose and trying to raise the next generation.
Yes.
Care
Yes.
and to have this compassionate lens as well, right?
Yes. Yes, it does. So tell us a little about now your shift. I know while you were at Legal Aid, OIC and Eastern Carolina. Well, now it's Legal Aid of North Carolina, and I had Sue Perry Cole on last week with North Carolina Association of CDCs, and we talked a little bit about transforming Rocky Mount. Let's talk about a little about what you see in Rocky Mount during your time that you've been working both as a leader at Legal Aid and now a leader in our community and in multiple communities related to community development and what attorneys can do to help individuals and help communities grow forward.
Yeah, sure, Reuben. Well, I know even before I became the leader or the managing attorney of the Wilson office, which serves 6 counties out east, that office had a rich history of doing community economic development work, as you just stated.
Mhm.
My predecessor was Miss Sue Perry Cole, who used to be also the leader of that particular program. And we know all the amazing work she did based on your discussion with her last week. But because of her work, the executive director of Legal Aid was like, Yolanda, your charge is to go to Eastern North Carolina and pick up the tradition of community economic development law. And I never knew what that was. They don't teach that, in most law schools. They might do it today, but I definitely did not know anything about community economic development law. So as you know, I was told to chase you down. I was told to chase Miss Barry Cole down, Miss Joyce Dickens, all the pillars and the leaders of Rocky Mount, so that we can build this partnership. And so what Ms. Sue Perry Cole told me, because Legal Aid was also at a crosshairs at that time, we had to lay off a number of employees, right? Involuntary RIF was in action. And so Sue stated, she looked at me, well, how long do you plan to be the leader of Legal Aid? I'm thinking to myself, why? She was like, because change takes time, right? So she said, are you going to shrivel up and be insignificant? Or do you want to find a way to shift and be significant? I said, of course, I want to have impact. I want to be significant. And so she told me about 14 underserved neighborhoods in Rocky Mount and a housing study report that color coded those neighborhoods, just like those old racist HELOC maps did. They were colored, burgundy red, meaning that they were fragile. that they were not the best neighborhoods. And then you saw Nash County side of Rocky Mount, all those neighborhoods were the color green, like they were rich, vibrant areas of opportunity. And so when she was telling me this, I had never like thought about a case in a systematic way, right? Because that legal aid is all about volume, helping individual clients. But I knew here there's 14 neighborhoods. So I wanted to be impactful. So I was like, well, I'm going to find a way. We need to represent all 14 neighborhoods. So she told me about the steering committee of the Community Academy and that there were representatives from all of those neighborhoods in that group. So I said, well, that needs to be my client. The steering committee of the Community Academy should be our client. And together, we put our heads together and, we were creative and we came up with a legal hook, which was fair housing. This is civil rights advocacy all over again, the work I never thought I would do, but I'm doing the work that, Martin Luther King did, because I'm on the ground organizing and walking with the people. Thurgood Marshall, he was a community lawyer before he became the Supreme Court justice. He,
Barack Obama.
Barack Obama, like all these different, like you said, grassroots organizers.
Obama, that's right.
And Rocky Mount, to me, I always knew about Rocky Mount because, again, I grew up in Wilson, but never really knew about Rocky Mount until I really met you and Sue. And I'm forever grateful, for being ordained to be in a space with you all and doing this amazing work because it's so needed. So the work that we're doing with community economic development law, as you know, housing is one of the I want to say the best well-known non-medical driver of health. And together with you and OIC and this partnership with Transforming Rocky Mount, we've been able to prove that through data, right? We've been able to show that these communities, have these higher incidences of hypertension, diabetes, depression, and an array of other issues just because of where you live. So where you live matters, right? And it determines your longevity.
It does. And what most of us don't realize is that, there are people who have literally made a living off of determining who gets to live and who does not get to live. And I don't mean they're sitting there passing death sentences on people, but when banks decide to not lend at full value certain properties in certain places, that's a death sentence. I want you to understand that. When there are variables attached to credit worthiness, first of all, credit was created to keep people out, not to bring people in. You understand that? Because that's a new invention in banking, over the last, 40, 50 years. That did not always exist. And so when we talk about challenging systems, we're saying that what we've got to do collectively is recognize that it takes something bigger than the individual in order to move our society forward. We need many individuals doing all the work, being very aware. And yes, I love using the phrase being woke. Why would you want to sleep through oppression? You cannot sleep through oppression. You got to, first of all, believe what you see. The data shows you, doesn't it, Yolanda, what is happening to people. Go ahead, talk.
Yeah, you're right. We got the qualitative data, which is narratives of people talking about their neighborhoods, describing their neighborhoods, talking about the decades and years of underinvestment or no investment at all. Then, like you said, you got the quantitative data of actually showing when you map where they live and you compare that to the actual health records that you have, and you see what these folks were diagnosed with. You see that the system, as we all say, is doing what it's designed to do, and it's reproducing an array of inequities in every system, right? Because of where you live. It's reproducing inequities in education. It's reproducing inequities in transportation. It's reproducing inequities in environmental justice, an array of job opportunities, an array of systems. So definitely I am a housing first person because I believe if you attack the whole injustice of where you live and whether or not you can even afford a safe and adequate house, that we are at least able to pluck at the root, a system that, we have to change.
So let's talk about that's so profound, by the way. Let's talk about what does an attorney do to help build community and help open up opportunity for other people to live lives of fulfillment, economic and physical, mental fulfillment. What does an attorney do? What do you do in this
So I
whole
think,
process of community building?
well, in the beginning, I did what I was taught, which was to admire the law, respect the law, have reverence for the law. And maybe, if you get a good case and you litigate it, maybe you can change the law and get a different result. I realized that, those in power, maintain power because they're the ones that are always constantly changing the law so that they can benefit. So as a lawyer, I realized, especially as a Black lawyer, that I brought a special identity to the work, right? Growing up in a community, being culturally competent to respect my clients, like when I meet with them, right? First, I think that I'm easily able to build trust with them, but I don't just ride on the fact that I'm a Black woman and immediately expect them to trust me. I know that trust takes time. So I'm in the role of allyship. When I'm employing what we call community lawyering, right, or movement lawyering, that's the method of practice. Is where I'm in allyship with the community, and I'm bringing the institution of the law to their self-identified community
Mm,
issue. And I think that's powerful because, like you're saying, and I'm working with organizers like Miss Sue Perry Cole. She's more than an organizer, but she's an
yeah.
amazing organizer.
Oh my
Still,
goodness.
I'm working with people like Sue Perry Cole, who has this knowledge of CED work, and we're showing residents that join your concern to your neighbor's concern, and now you have collective power. Because it's easy for someone to like shut you down if you're just one person going to the city council meeting, I guess month after month, and you're alone or the only one voicing this concern. But when you have your neighbor and your neighbors and your neighbors and your neighbors, and you're all joined together in collective action, then that's a voice to be reckoned with. That's your power right there. So building that power through organizing, and also letting the people also be the stewards of their own ship, so to
Mm,
speak, that they are the ones identifying what their problems are. They're the ones also then building a consensus with one another, because you can have 10 issues, right? But what if
mm,
we can't address all 10 issues? How can we build a consensus around maybe three of those issues? What are the top three issues? So I'm sitting in community and I'm seeing the residents there voting on their top three priorities, and then they're bringing them back to me. And and one of my I want to say mentees, an amazing community lawyer too, she's not here, she's at legal aid still. I hire her to help me with this work. Seeing her work with them as well, and they're bringing their issues back to us, and then we're finding that legal hook. And not only that, we're educating them. We're educating them about things like zoning, land
mm,
use, fair housing, the different plans and the different documents that the city is moving forward on an agenda, the different items that will go before their city council or their local representatives, and they're able to speak on these issues. Because a lot of people don't speak because they are embarrassed that they don't know what they're going to say.
mm.
They feel that those in front of them are smarter or have more intelligence. But as you know, as a city council person, these residents in Rocky Mount are on fire. And when they come before the city council, they are sometimes educating the city council
Oh yes,
on
and
issues.
and the city staff. I just want
And
to
the
say
city staff, definitely the
because
city staff.
yeah, and it's for our listeners, just so you understand, the topics that we bring, that we talk about, I try to make sure that they're relevant to what we're living through, experiencing every day, but recognizing that the people that you get a chance and opportunity to hear are folk who are accomplished in their fields, their areas of work, and areas of study, and they bring all of their focus and energy to strengthen people where they live. So what I love is the tapestry, the beautiful tapestry of high level professionals working with working class folk
Mhm.
What I love is seeing people who never thought they had the confidence or the ability to stand before others and present their case in a manner that sound. It's like TV. It's like the movies, watching people transform and say brilliant things and
Mhm.
bring wonderful ideas to us. So Yolanda, we appreciate, gosh, we appreciate your big persona and the hard work that you have done to strengthen Rocky Mount. We're going to take a break just for a moment or two. So listen, folks, we got to pay our bills here. You know, everybody needs a check, and I know you do too. So just stay with us if you would. I'm Reuben Blackwell, and this is Express Yourself with Choice FM, the People's Station.
Choice FM is live at 5.
But it's like this, the South got something to say. That's all I got to say.
Reuben Blackwell and Express Yourself on Choice FM.
Well, we're back. And this is Reuben again, and I'm talking with my good friend and the person that I greatly admire, attorney Yolanda Taylor, wife of Eugene, mother of two brilliant young ladies, Sasha. I was going to say Sasha and Malia, but
Well, I did kind of like snatch that name from Michelle Obama because I thought it was beautiful. But yeah, Sasha, who's 10, and Chloe, who's 13.
Chloe, that's right. That's right. Two dynamic and they are creative geniuses. It's just a wonderful to see. I sort of follow them on TikTok and all that kind of stuff, y'all. You know. So I am a fan. I'm a fan of the Taylor family. Yolanda's husband is a phenomenal drummer, musician himself, and um and a great persona. So you done well. What did they say? We learned last week you come from good stock, right? And you
Good
create good
stock,
stock.
good stock. You have good stock too, Ruben, as you know, and love your family as well. And just like I said, just so humble and just so honored to know you and the legacy that you created and that you are leaving, in Rocky Mount and Miss Sue Perico and Joyce Dickinson, all of you giants, to me. So honored to do community lawyering work in Rocky Mount and to dismantle, as you stated, systems that have for decades been, intentionally not producing economic development on the Edgecombe County side of town. So I've been, I don't want to say in the ditches with you because we're not in a ditch,
No,
but I've been in the trenches
we
with
are in a trench.
we're
We're
in
not
the
in the
trench.
midst of, we're in the trench. And we are fighting our way through, aren't we?
Yeah, we refuse to be in the ditch. I'm like, you'll be in the ditch, but I'll be in the ditch. Not you, but you know who I'm talking about. They will be in the ditch before we're in the ditch, right? So, just fighting this fight for equitable development in Rocky Mount. And we know that time is of the essence because we see that North Carolina, coming out of the pandemic, has been one of the fastest growing states in the South. People in Raleigh tell me like 56 people move to Raleigh daily. Even though Nash and Edgecombe County have been counties that have lost population, that trajectory is definitely going to change to a trajectory of growth. And so in 2015, when we started talking about gentrification, people thought we were crazy. But look at
Right.
2024. Look at all the people that can't afford Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, some parts of Harnett County, Cary, and now Rocky Mount has been rebranded as the greater area of Raleigh.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that
That
amazing?
is
So for our listeners who live in Raleigh, because we're in Raleigh and we're in Rocky Mount, there are things that we can learn, aren't there, Yolanda, from
yes.
looking at how Raleigh has handled and managed its growth. What are some trends that you see in Wake County and in Raleigh? Let's talk about the good stuff and let's talk about where the gaps are and what could have been done, what should have been done, and what we're trying to accomplish in Rocky Mount as a result.
Well, I guess the good things that I've seen in Raleigh has been, this ability to leverage this growth and this interest in North Carolina. Those who do work in this area consider that the growth is coming because these were pandemic refugees that wanted to escape New York and other like high dense areas during the pandemic, and they're moving here. But North Carolina is a beautiful state, so a lot of people are moving here. I'm seeing plans around transit. I'm seeing different housing types are being built, which is needed, I will say, in an economy where, a single family house, I think in Wake County, the last time I checked, the median was, averaging around 400 something thousand dollars for a house, right, in Wake County. So the need to have different housing types like townhomes. I'm seeing a new trend around cottage homes, duplexes, triplexes, condos, being built, not just in Raleigh and Durham, but also in places like Wake Forest, where I live too. So all the suburban areas are benefit from this growth, and also the exurb areas as well. And as you, like I stated, like Wilson and Rocky Mount are part of this. So diversity, I'm seeing a lot of diversity occur in places like Raleigh and Durham, and that's always good, to have diversity, different people, different perspectives. Um, in a city. I was just in Wilson this weekend. I saw Wilson Pride. I never thought I would ever see that happen in Wilson. So that's
Right,
growth, that's
right,
diversity, that's people moving into,
right.
these areas. And then they are the ones saying, well, this is the culture shift that needs to happen because we are here. And this needs to be a welcoming, inclusive environment. So those are the good things. Some of the gaps that I've seen is that I don't think the African American communities were prepared. They got caught off guard. I'm talking about historic African American communities. I'm talking about communities that are around anchored institutions like Shaw University, St. Augustine University, downtown Raleigh, Southeast Raleigh. The developers came in. The folks were not organized, therefore they didn't have political will or political power. And it could be because there were some communities in Raleigh that steered the developers there because they were more vocal about we don't want this in our neighborhood, right? So the developers were easily able to go into downtown. And let's be clear here, the city of Raleigh in their planning documents also designed it that way. They did a destination plan where they wanted downtown to be this future destination of hotels, of sport arenas, of all these wonderful things. But when you look at these plans, you see buildings, you see structures, you see, all the shiny things, but these plans don't really talk about people. And so the work that we're doing in Rocky Mount is that we're keeping people in the middle of all these plans because we got to talk about people. We can't just talk about transit. We're not talking about who's going to be able to ride a transit, who will the transit benefit, who will be burdened by lack of transit. We can't talk about neighborhoods without saying, well, who is it going to be affordable for? Who's going to benefit from this long wait of investment? Those who have waited, those legacy residents, should be the ones to be able to benefit after all this time of not having anything. So now is the time to plan for equitable development and equitable growth in Rocky Mount because homelessness has increased in Raleigh as well.
And it's increasing in Rocky Mount and every other place and space in America and possibly the world. I mean, I really don't know how to compare, but the economic divide is growing greatly. And I see much of politics that uses simplistic analyses about how people get poor and stay poor. And they use the same old playbook since the 1500s, and they're blaming Black people for poverty, and they're blaming poor people for not having systems in place, and they're blaming people for really fulfilling the systems that they're leading and designing. And as you said, those systems are working. We can't say the system is broken. The system is working quite efficiently. What's broken is hope in the shift and the change. Let's talk a little bit about who you're working with in the Raleigh community. And can I just say just my recollections. I worked in Raleigh with the Chamber of Commerce from the mid 80s to the early 90s. And I worked along with a lot of these companies that have located and expanded. And I also had an opportunity to work very closely with Mr. John Winters, Pauline Frazier, who was the Joyce Dickens of Raleigh, She was the executive director of the Southeast Raleigh Community Development Association, Sterling Goodwin, um, and the one of the phenomenal individuals was Pat Funderburk Ware, who is from Wilson as well, Yolanda. So Wilson has a way of incubating and growing these brilliant Black women and introducing them to the world. And we thank Wilson for that, you know. But what I remember back in the 80s is Black people owning businesses in downtown Raleigh near Shaw. And they were so disinterested in the development plans that the city of Raleigh was plotting, planning, designing. And I remember John Winters having a major problem with Black leadership, who refused to hear his appeal for prioritizing development with Black people, working with Black people, prioritizing planning and keeping abreast of what issues are, and finding ways to hold on to their property. What has happened since the late 80s and 90s in downtown Raleigh? How many Black businesses do we have now? Are there still, is it still an enclave of Black businesses and a cluster of Black businesses near
Rocky
Shaw?
Mount definitely has more. I mean, Rocky Mount definitely has way more Black businesses, I will say, downtown than Raleigh does, and I think Durham does as well. I mean, my recollection, I should say, probably goes back to like when I was at NC State in the 90s, you know. So, you know, NC State is like adjacent to downtown. So,
Mhm.
you know, I recall there being, you know, nothing but Black people downtown, right? I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, it's not as exciting. It wasn't as exciting as it is now. They have all the bars and restaurants, but it was definitely a Black community where people, you know, value their culture and they value their roots and their history. Um, I remember there were places I would go downtown, like maybe there was a car wash. I remember that got gentrified. You know, everyone went there. All the lawyers went there to get their cars washed. You know, when I
Mhm.
became a lawyer, that got displaced further down Capitol Boulevard. And there were some other businesses that maybe a club or two, you know, that
Yeah.
maybe party at when I was in college. That's gone. That's been displaced. And I also think Isaac's, you know, the men's shop
Yeah, the
that
clothing
got
store.
displaced,
That's
that's
right.
moved, that moved somewhere
That was
else.
an icon. That was an
Yeah, that
icon.
was a staple. So all
Yeah,
these staple
gone.
businesses, you know, are moving. And so now they've tried to attract some other Black businesses. Some will come for a little while. I think there are some there, you know, that are Black or Black adjacent, or maybe have like a co-owner that might be Black, you know,
Mhm.
but definitely has changed. And the recent census revealed that the majority of people that currently live downtown are white males. I believe it went up tremendously. I don't have the data right in front of me, but if
Mhm.
I recall the article about the demographic shift,
Mhm.
it's white single men that primarily now live downtown, where it used to be predominantly Black. So there are less women downtown, and there are also less families downtown because the
Mhm.
new developers are coming in and they want to build, you know, 40 stories. Like they're immediately petitioning for rezoning hearings.
Well, I remember, and that's why we have to be so careful. There was an individual who came to our committee, the whole meeting, the city council in Raleigh, and he was saying, well, there's so much more value in dense population apartment style buildings than there are single family homes. And you just got to think about what's going to get you the most money for the long term. And I was sort of really taken aback at that statement and appalled. Not saying that there's not a place and a time for dense development, but why is the evaluation of how much money you can make off of taxes the measure of success of the city? What about livability? What about a sense of a place of history and a place of future development? And why do we want to turn every green space into a multiplex of a compendium of everything that nobody Black owns? And this is the point, Yolanda,
Profitability.
that gets me, is that Black people we will trade land ownership for being adjacent to something that's shiny and new that we have to pay to walk into. Not that pays us, but that we have to pay. Nothing wrong with being close to amenities, but
Mhm.
wouldn't it be better to own
Yes.
what you're working with and to
Yes.
participate in ownership? That's what I don't get.
And so I did see that too. And some of the city council people I've spoken to about gentrification have said, well, I guess the white people see it. They're coming in. They see an opportunity. They see the writing on the wall. They see that this neighborhood is going to change and go from a neighborhood of lack to a neighborhood of abundance. All that some of our younger Black people saw was leaving this neighborhood means I have arrived. I've reached a level of success. So, like, in addition to doing community lawyering work, I do wills, estates, and trusts, and I kind of like got into that because it was like a very next likely practice area. It meshes well with what I do, like teaching people like don't sell grandma's house. We're looking at one of the biggest wealth transfers because the baby boomers, that generation of folks that are set to retire experts are talking about like the billions of dollars of wealth
Yeah.
transfer that we're going to miss out on because we don't do wills. I was looking at some of the data before jumping on this interview with you, and it was just talking about like just Americans generally, like maybe 7% of Americans don't have wills, but when you look at whites compared to blacks compared to Hispanics, like we are like low, like very low. We rarely have a will. We know that just from our experiences and seeing the
And
work
that's not an issue of poverty. Because
that's not an issue of
I
poverty.
know well-heeled Black folk who have died and passed on, and
Yes.
their kids are struggling to figure out what to do with what I have because that was not expressed clearly while the parents were living, and they didn't take the next step to document it in legal form. So I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a personal witness, and I know what that feels like myself. So we got to do better. Let's, for the remainder of time that we have, I think we got about 10 more minutes, Yolanda.
Okay.
I want to talk about what you teach because there's a dynamic part of you. And if you've ever been in Attorney Taylor's presence, she's brilliant in her thinking and in her strategy development, but she's also a lifelong instructor. And you have this way of engaging people and then teaching them these little nuggets that they hold on to that you can use the rest of your life. How do you translate that in the classroom? And what are you teaching today?
Okay, well, I am teaching a course at Wake Forest University Law School called Introduction to Community Lawyering.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. You mean that subject area that had no definition when you
Yeah,
were a young person coming up, and you're still young, when you were younger and you were coming up saying, I want to be like, but there was no school to go to. The universe, the Lord,
yes,
has
Lord.
dropped into your mind, your spirit, an opportunity now to fill a gap that existed. So I had to just take a moment, a little praise moment, just to say, wow, you're a leader in the field, right?
Well, I mean, if I will accept that title. I believe I am at Wake Forest University Law School because
Come on
this is the
now.
first and only like community lawyering clinic. Now, there are other clinics that work with the community, right? I mean, clinics are something new at law schools, and the whole mission of clinics are to equip, soon to be lawyers with actual real life client experience. So there are a lot of clinics, and there are a lot of great clinics there at Wake Forest University Law School, but they're not called Introduction to Community Lawyering. I know they're working in the community, they're working with clients, but are they doing this systemic change work that we're doing, right? Are they sitting with the community? Are they walking with community? Are they in allyship with community? Are they willing to be uncomfortable? And when I say uncomfortable, I admit, we all have privileges. You have privileges, or I should say social advantages. I have social advantages.
Yeah.
But when my client is standing up or the community is standing up talking about, the years of racism that they've encountered, it's no time for me to be uncomfortable by the word. In fact, I identify with them. And I
Right.
agree with them that yes, it must be said. And yes, if you don't want to talk about reparations, we need to talk about restorative justice. So in this course, I'm teaching private law students. Some of them are from wealthy backgrounds. Some of them all of them are pretty much privileged, to be able to afford the tuition, right, at Wake Forest University Law School. They're beginning to see that, all that they've learned, and these are like second year law students and 3-year law students, what they've learned so far in law school, I'm tipping it on its head because I'm saying where a legal remedy is, justice requires more, and so, yeah, the law may say, okay, well, we don't have rent control, right? We don't have rent control. The landlord can continue to raise the rent. But what does justice require in this situation? Is it just for someone who's not late on their rent, they're paying their rent, to now be economically displaced just because there's no law that prevents the landlord from taking advantage of all this investment that's now coming into the community, for landlords to decide, you know what, I want a new tenant, I want a wealthy tenant. And that's what we're seeing in Raleigh. Landlords are now opting for these wealthy tenants that can pay $2,000 a month for rent. Some are paying $3,000 a month for rent. There are some paying $13,000 a month for rent in some of the most prestigious areas in Raleigh. So I'm teaching them, one, how to build a common language with, low income, modest income communities. I'm teaching them culturally competency, and I'm teaching them, that litigation, is good, but everyone can't afford to litigate. We have to equip communities on how to fight for themselves. And sometimes, this is the political fight, right? That they have to do. So we research, strategies for them. We help them write policies. We actually do transactional legal work for them. We write legal documents for them. We write letters on their behalf to the city. And that's in Winston-Salem where I teach. So we've written letters to the city attorney in Winston-Salem. We've written letters to, we've had meetings with the mayor, demanding that as the community grows, that the community is the co-developer, of their community, and that they get to say what type of house they want there. So that's the work that we do, and I'm excited to do it with another legal aid predecessor of mine, Hazel Mack, is in Winston.
Oh, yeah.
You remember Hazel? Yep. So she's the one
Wonderful.
she's the one that connected me to Wake Forest University Law School. And I'm sorry, Reuben, just real quick, you asked me who I was working with in Raleigh. I have to, give a shout out to Otavia Rainey. She is still the queen there on the ground, saying what needs to be said and calling the city out. And I also work with a house group called the Wake County Justice Coalition. So
your vision and your mission lands you with people who are like-minded, and for you to be able to walk with these powerful, erudite women and men that have presence and are making change says a lot about who you are. So I need you to embrace that too, because what I've learned is that people don't have time to play. If they had time to play, you find them in the club, in the casino, But
we don't have time to play. We don't have time to play about these elections either.
We do not have. Let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk. We got probably about 5 more minutes.
Okay.
And so I'm about all things political. No holds barred. Talking with Reuben. So let's talk about politics. What's on your mind as far as issues? Let's talk about issues. What's important to you?
Well, I guess, of course, everyone's looking at the national stage, but as far as North Carolina, I'm concerned about education. I'm concerned about these opportunity scholarships. I'm concerned about what's going to happen to traditional public schools and how that's going to disproportionately impact rural communities or places like, Wilson, Rocky Mount, that may have private schools, but it may not have the number of private schools that they have in Raleigh, right? Or in urban areas. So that's an issue. I'm concerned about why is the minimum wage still $7.25 an hour? That's ridiculous to me that, when there are reports that say in order to live comfortably in Raleigh, you're going to make at least six figures, and that's for one adult. Imagine what a family has to make in order to live comfortably in Raleigh. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the way we build, right? A lot of people I come up against in Raleigh believes that we should build for the wealthy and it would trickle down to the middle class and to the poor. And they believe that that's the way, we solve this housing affordability crisis. I believe that I'm like, why can't it trickle up? Why can't we build for those at the bottom, because I'm sure there are people who can't afford to live where they are, and we built them affordable housing that they can live where they should be. And because they're probably taking up housing space for somebody who could afford their house, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of discussion around that. But as far as elections, we got to get out there and vote. And I know there's apathy in our community. And I work with two amazing dynamic nonprofit organizations who are my clients, the North Carolina Black Alliance and Advanced Carolina, where I'm able to do this policy work and this on the ground work around elections. We need to make sure we have our IDs together and we have our voter IDs. We need to make sure that, when we vote, we might want to keep ourselves safe. No telling what's going to happen at these precincts, depending on where you are. And I'm part of a group called the Black Legal Network. It's me and two other Black women attorneys who co-lead it, and we're making sure that we're on the ground doing the general election in November and in early voting to make sure that there's not intimidation, there's not suppression, there's not misinformation, and there's not an unusual number of provisional ballots, right? Because those are some concerns. Sometimes people are being told to, vote a provisional ballot and they're given that information incorrectly. And then, when you have the canvas part, sometimes their ballot can be tossed out.
Yeah.
The provisional ballot.
And they love to do that with provisional. And they're steering people to provisional. That's what y'all need to understand. Better to say, no, I'm coming back, or I'm going to double check where I'm supposed to vote and go get it done then than it is to vote in a way and in a manner and a place that you're not certain about what happens. Because I can guarantee you, very few provisional votes get counted in the
very few.
Very few. So Yolanda, how can if people want to work with you or work or know who to talk with, and they are income challenged, they're living in a community and they feel that the community is changing so quickly they don't know if they'll be able to stay, keep their home, keep the apartment that they're renting, who do they call? Who can steer, help, support these folk, and how do you get in touch with them?
Okay. Well, I do help, provide resources. Like, even if I can't help you, I'm willing to, get
steer.
Like, if you have no income and you need to call legal aid, then I would say go to legalaidnc.org where you can apply online. That's if you have no income or very little income. There are lawyers, but my number is 984-401-2141. My website is lawandandcommunity.com. I have a tab there that says contact me. So yeah, I practice in the area of fair housing, contract law, business law, wills, estates, and trusts. But because I am a housing advocate, I definitely can hopefully connect you to where you need to go. Because definitely, there's a justice gap, and I have a heart about closing that gap because I am a former legal aid attorney. So I would say reach out to me or go to legalaidnc.org if you
and they'll get you where you need to be. Now can I put in a plug in for you too?
Yes.
So Yolanda said former legal aid. That means when you call, it ain't always free. Everything has a price. She's got a mortgage and children and desires and needs herself. So some things cost and some things are worth what you have to pay. But thank you so much for joining us, Yolanda. Thank you for talking with me and all of my friends that are listening and tuning in wherever they are. We just appreciate you so much. Any final words you want to say before we close this section
out? Like I said, vote and don't be fooled.
That's right.
Don't be fooled in November now.
That's right. Stay woke before you vote.
Yeah, they woke before you vote, okay? They woke. Don't listen to those rappers
That's
out.
right. That's right. Who are all
Don't
front
listen to
people,
them. They
who
got
are
money.
front
Don't listen to
people
them.
for billion-dollar organizations. Don't
Yes,
listen to the hype man. You can listen to the music, whatever, whatever, but they are not your friends in the
they're
way
not
that you
friends.
use your vote. They're
Yes,
not your
not.
friends. They bought and paid for, but all of them that come up
Yes.
with these agendas. I don't know none of them, and they don't know me, but I can tell you they don't live where you live. They don't know what you're dealing with. If they do, they've passed on their conscience. So anyway, thank you so much, Yolanda. Much appreciation, much love, and thank you for being with us. And thank you for listening to Reuben Blackwell and Express Yourself. I'm signing out with my friend Yolanda Taylor, Esquire, attorney at law. We appreciate you. Thank you for listening. You have a great week. God bless.
Choice FM is live at 5.
But it's like this, the South got something to say. That's all I got to say.
Reuben Blackwell and Express Yourself on Choice FM.